Is this surprising? I don't think so, as I said. Democracy was going to be very hard. I think where we are now is an interesting place. First, multi-party elections have been institutionalized in almost all countries across the continent, with a few like Eritrea being the exception. The plurality of elections worldwide each year occur in Africa. That is very important development, quite striking. These elections, as have been said, however, vary enormously in quality, and leaders have come to understand how to manipulate them in many cases. Not in all cases. Some incumbents are still surprised that they cannot manipulate an election successfully. Thus, multi-party elections are a constant in most of Africa, and they inject a certain amount of instability into the political system and the prospect for greater freedom in the future. But the other thing has changed is that the intellectual arguments against democracy are becoming stronger. I know there's a lot of talk in your daily business about a Beijing consensus, that perhaps the Chinese model of political authoritarianism and economic liberalization to a degree, perhaps that's being exported to Africa. That's not my perception. I don't think the Chinese have that kind of soft power, to go back to the last session. My perception, however, is that some of the successful authoritarians in Africa are beginning to have an effect. In the African leaders I've talked to, and I must have talked to a half a dozen in the last 6 years or so, in the last year or so, they all talk about Rwanda. Okay? Looks good. Came back amazingly from the genocide, significant economic growth. Hey, and the leader can stay in power for as long as he wants. So good for the people and good for the leader. And it's Kagame's consensus that seems to be the major threat to democratic thought in Africa today, although there have been noises from Ethiopia from time to time also about a developmental state. Those are two profound examples, both given the importance of Rwanda, given the genocide in Ethiopia, given its mass, location, role in African history. Those are two significant counter-arguments to you must have democracy. And there is an intellectual battle going on that I think is very important. And at the moment, the authoritarians in Africa, the soft authoritarians, not the socialists of the mid-1970s, although some who have felt Kagame's wrath would not call him a soft authoritarian. But the authoritarians with successful development states are beginning to make an impact on intellectual discourse in Africa, and I think that explains some of the movement away. Finally, I will tell you that those opposed to authoritarians who seek to gain power through elections are enormously disheartened by the current stance of the international community. I was in a meeting of senior African leaders, many military, some civilian leaders from Southern Africa, right after the Ugandan elections, and Zambians and others told me, okay, we get it. We're on our own. No one is going to come to our aid. And our only recourse, if we feel that the elections are unfair, is violence. That appealing to the international community to put pressure on is simply not going to work. So I think you have a confused situation. Number of countries which have clearly institutionalized freedom, they tend to be small in population. That category is not growing at the moment. And then you have a large number of countries which are kind of ping-ponging between hard authoritarianism and soft authoritarianism with the overlay of elections, but no clear movement at the moment. Individual countries may move, but no clear trends on the African continent. By historic standards, that's completely to be expected, and what we saw in Western Europe and elsewhere. So I think the challenges for democracy at the political level will remain very significant. And I would say there has been some deterioration and some prospects for further deterioration depending on how this war of ideas plays out.